This is the last video in this series to help you with lesson planning, and this is where all that you have learned should now come together. So I would just like to talk you through a lesson plan. I'm first going to focus on the 5-minute lesson plan that is expected in your portfolio, and then we will move on towards an example of a subject-specific lesson plan. I do not have all the subject lesson plans, so I just use one as an example. You will adjust it according to the specific subject that you have or whichever lesson plan template that you use. For the Work Integrated Learning portfolio, we are not concerned with the specific template. So you may use a generic template, you may use a subject-specific template. If your lecturer expects of you to use one specific template, then use that one. It is very important to remember that you must add all your resources. So if you in the lesson refer to a textbook, I need a photograph of that textbook paper or a scanned in picture. If you talk about a PowerPoint, you should design that PowerPoint and add it. So be careful for adding too many resources that you do not have access to. If we look at the 5-minute lesson plan, this is such a wonderful tool to plan lessons because it forces you to look at the essence. You cannot add too much in these little blocks. So you really need to know what is the essential core of my lesson plan. If we start with the frame in the top left, the big picture, what is the context? What does my class look like? How many learners do I have in my class? What is special about them? What do I need to know about the context in which I'm teaching this lesson before I start to plan it? Then the lesson outcomes. Please go back to the lesson outcome video and look at that little rhyme. At the end of this lesson, the learner will be able to put in a Bloom's verb, put in your content. Rewrite that 3 times. Remember to keep your lesson outcomes simple. Rather only have 2 or 3 outcomes that you know you can reach. Please remember that activities are not outcomes. The star asks you to link your outcomes to the CAPS document. So which page in the CAPS document am I on? Just copy and paste that little bit of the CAPS document in here so that you know that you are on the right track. The pertinent question is very important. Here you are going to tell me, how is this one lesson linked to real world? What must learners learn in this lesson that they will be able to use? Remember the 4 reasons why learners learn: need, novelty, emotion, and real life experience. This was discussed in a video earlier on. Now the introduction. Please remember, if you refer back to the previous video, leave this little block open till last. That is why it has those little traffic lights there. Stop. Do this last. Plan your whole lesson and then make sure that your introduction sets the scene for this play that is going to happen. Knowledge, values, and skills. There was a video explaining this to you. What knowledge, what theoretical knowledge am I going to teach? What skills am I going to teach? So what practical aspects are there in this lesson? And the values linked to the rules we live by, the right and the wrong. What values do I want to instill in my learners to make them good South African citizens through this lesson? Assessment. You will have formative assessment because remember we do not do summative assessment in a lesson. So what informal formative assessment will I have? Will I ask continuous questions as I go? Will I ask students to write something down or draw a little picture or do a little role play? What formal formative assessment might I have in my lesson? Are they going to do something that we are going to mark afterwards that is going to count marks? Are they going to write a little class test, or are they going to create a poster, or are they going to do a role play that is going to be peer assessed? Whatever you do for your assessment will be formal formative if you write it up for marks. If it's not written up for marks, it is informal formative. Then we get to the teaching strategy. So what are you as a teacher going to do? In the next slide, I will discuss this in more detail. Learner activities. Please remember we want active learning. We want the learners engaged and involved. This does not have to mean group work. It does have to mean that they are in some way actively involved by the learning, either by answering questions or writing down a little word. Copying work from the board or reading from a textbook is not engaged learning. Resources, here you need to tell me what you use. And the most valuable tool that a teacher has is his own voice. That's your first and utmost important resource. You may use a textbook if you want. You do not need to. You can use the internet. You can use real life experiences. You can bring a rock from outside and do a wonderful lesson with a rock as a resource. Consolidation. Remember that I said it is very important that you use the last 5 minutes of your lesson to recapture the lesson outcomes, to reiterate the most important pertinent question in this lesson, to for a last time go through the important new learning that has taken place. This is an example of a lesson plan for a subject. Yours might look a little different, but I think the basic principles will be the same. So you have your name, student number, subject, the grade for which you are teaching this lesson, the duration of this lesson. Is it 30 minutes? Is it 40 minutes? The date, the CAPS topic, and then the lesson theme. You need to have a lesson theme, clouds or small business enterprises or algebraic equations. I need to immediately know what this lesson is about. Then they ask you to insert your lesson aids. Please write them out in that little rhyme that I taught you. At the end of this lesson, the learner will be able to one verb per lesson outcome. And remember, activities are not outcomes. The pertinent question, how is this lesson relevant and applicable to real life? Then this lesson plan expects of you as a student to tick which general aims of CAPS you are addressing and which general aims of the subject you are addressing. Some lesson plans have this, other lesson plans do not. Do not be concerned if your lesson plan looks different. Now you have to pay attention to the knowledge, skills, and values that you are going to teach. Please distinguish between them clearly. Go back to my video if you do not quite understand the difference yet. And here you have to list knowledge, skills, and values. You are not always going to have skills, but you will always have some knowledge and you will always have some values. Context analysis is very important because this shows me that you as a teacher did some thinking about the learners sitting in front of you. Who are they? What is their socioeconomic circumstance? What is the language policy in the class? Is it a parallel medium class? Is it a single medium class? What is their competency in terms of language of teaching? How many students are in the class? Are there special needs students that will need your specific attention in this matter? Then you will get the second part of the lesson plan that will talk about the introduction, the teaching and learning phase, and the consolidation phase. For many lesson plans, this looks the same, so I've just copied one here to show it as an example. They ask you to indicate what teaching material you are using. So, are you using your own PowerPoint? Are you using a textbook? Are you using a YouTube video? Are you using an experiment? The teaching strategy is now your role as a teacher. What are you going to do in the introductory phase? What are you going to do in this teaching and learning phase? And what is your role going to be in the consolidation phase? You get 4 types of teaching strategies. The first one is direct. So that is like a lecture. I, as a teacher, am explaining something. Direct. Indirect is when the learners do some of the work and you as a teacher do some of the work. Independent, the learners do it totally by themselves. So you will give them an activity and you will walk around and help individually, but overall they are doing it by themselves. And cooperative will include group work or peer work where they will work together. And in the next block, you need to explain. Now, this is where you really have to write out step by step what is going to happen. The teacher will do this, The learners will respond by doing this. The teacher will then do this. The teacher will hand out a worksheet. He will give 5 minutes for the students to complete it. So you need to do this in as much detail as you can. Because remember, in this portfolio, the marker only has that what you give him to work with. So you need to explain this in as much detail as you can. The same for the learner activities. What are the learners going to do? How are they actively involved in the learning? If you say they complete the worksheet, I want to see that worksheet and I want to see how much time you allocate for this to happen. And then we get to assessment. Now remember, the types of assessment will be formative, so it will be informal or formal formative assessment. The assessment tool refers to that what you are going to use to measure. Are you going to use a checklist in your mind? Tick, learners can do this. Are you using a rubric to mark, or are the student learners using a rubric to mark their friends' works? Are you using a memorandum? What is the tool that you use to see how they are performing in this assessment? Level of Bloom's. Am I just testing knowledge? Am I testing understanding? Am I testing creation? And then you need to set out the activity, word for word. What do you expect them to do? Again, ladies and gentlemen, remember that the templates look different. So yours might look a bit different. I'm just trying to give you a general idea of what a lesson plan looks like. Please remember to attach all your resources for your portfolio. If you talk about the PowerPoint, I want the PowerPoint. So you will combine everything that you need for your lesson plan in one PDF document. There is a guiding document for creating a PDF document on eFundi. It is not that complicated. You need to convert everything to PDFs first, and then you combine it into one PDF. The more resources you attach, the more I can see that you really went to some effort in planning this lesson. Please try not to only use a textbook, and please try to think out of the box, even if it is just for one small activity in that lesson, that I really want to see your personality as a teacher. I want to see that you really thought about the context of this learners. I want to see that you really thought about what you want to teach them. Even if it is just one small thing that we're teaching them today, if they walk out of the class and I ask them, "Oh, what have you learned today?" I want the same answer from all the students. And that answer must show constructive alignment. It must answer the lesson outcomes. It must answer the lesson activities, and it must show you what assessment you did, all in one pertinent question. Good luck with lesson planning. Remember, the more practice you do, the easier it will get.